Sleeping 8 hours straight is probably an invention. If you could stand in an English village in 1650, you would find the house awake at midnight. Court records and prayer books casually mention a first sleep and a second sleep. Hadza foragers stagger their nights, so somebody is always awake. In a Pleistocene winter, darkness ran 16 hours a day. Now we compress all of it into one block and call anything else a disorder. Not because a doctor discovered it, or the body demanded it, or because it is how we ever slept. So why do we sleep all night in one go? The real story is slower. It starts with what people wrote about their own nights. Let's talk about the first sleep. For decades, historians read those lines as metaphor. They are not. One study found more than 500 references across English, French, and Italian sources. People went down around 9, slept 4 hours, and rose. They spent the next hour praying, tending fires, visiting neighbors, and reading the dreams they had just left. Physicians recommended conceiving children in that hour because both people had rested. But the references thin out. Street lighting and cheap candles pushed bedtime later, and factory shifts squeezed the night from the other end. By 1920, the second sleep was gone from ordinary English. Now, the Hadza. Researchers watched 33 of them sleep for 20 days. Across 3 weeks, there were 18 minutes in total when the whole camp was asleep at once. But nobody was assigned a watch. Older members slept early and woke at 4, the young stayed up late, and between them, the dark was covered. We read that same early waking in our grandparents as decline. It looks more like a rota. Let's talk about the court records. The phrase sat in plain sight for 3 centuries, and the historians reading those pages walked straight past it. Roger Ekirch spent 16 years in the archives of early modern crime, and he was not looking for sleep. He was reading depositions about robbery, arson, and murder. In a Yorkshire case from 1699, a woman named Jane Routh told the court she woke after the first sleep and found 2 men standing over her bed. Nobody in that room asked her what she meant. That is the tell. A phrase that needs no explanation in a murder trial is one that everybody in the building lives by. It worked as a timestamp because almost nobody owned a clock. A pocket watch cost a laborer months of wages. So the night was told by the body and by the animals. After the first sleep, at cock crow, before light. Clerks wrote it down because it was accurate enough, since the gap opened at about the same hour in every house on the street. Burglars used it as well. The ones who got caught were usually the ones who mistimed the waking. It is the vaguest timestamp in the archive, and for 400 years it satisfied a jury. In legal English, it works as a plain time of night until the 1750s. After that, it survives only as a quotation. Now, the rest of the world. It is tempting to file this as a quirk of damp, dark northern Europe. It is not. The Odyssey has a first sleep. Livy and Virgil write primo somno as an ordinary hour of the Roman night. Chaucer uses firste sleep in the 1390s and never stops to explain it. Sancho Panza reaches his segundo sueño in a book printed in 1605. Anthropologists working among the Tiv of central Nigeria in the 1960s found first sleep and second sleep in everyday use. Nobody there was preserving a custom. The Roman army cut the dark into 4 watches of roughly 3 hours each. The rule of Saint Benedict, written around 530, has monks rising in the middle of the night to sing. The office was fitted into a gap that was already there. Sailors still stand 4 hours on and 4 hours off. But none of this was a rule anyone had to teach. A long night is simply longer than a body can spend unconscious. Rome, Yorkshire, and the Tiv did not borrow it from each other. They were each handed a long dark, and each did the same thing with it. Benedict argues about wine, about silence, about how much bread a monk gets in a day. He never once argues for the gap, because in 530 there is nothing to argue about. Now, the evening. Spending time in the evening is a newer habit than the steam engine. In 1807, a stretch of Pall Mall in London was lit by gas, and crowds turned out to look at the lamps. By 1823, the city was burning gas in about 40,000 lamps along 215 miles of street. What gas built was not a brighter street. It was a block of usable hours. Theaters ran later, shops stayed open until 10, and the main meal of the day drifted from noon towards 8. By the 1860s, a London music hall could hold 2,000 people at 10 at night. The Savoy lit its stage with 1,200 electric lamps in 1881, and audiences came for the light as much as the opera. Edison opened Pearl Street Station in 1882 with 82 customers. By 1930, about two-thirds of American homes were wired. On farms, it was under a tenth until the Rural Electrification Act of 1935. We did not surrender the gap because we stopped needing it. We surrendered it because the hours in front of it finally filled up. The dark stopped being something to get through and became something to spend. Now, the 8 hours. The number did not come out of a laboratory. It came off a picket line. In 1817, Robert Owen printed a demand: 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest. He landed on 8 because 24 splits into 3 equal parts, and 3 was how many things he wanted a day to contain. The arithmetic is the whole argument. On the 1st of May, 1886, roughly 300,000 American workers struck for the 8-hour day. In January 1914, Ford put the plant on 3 8-hour shifts at $5 a day, which kept the machines running around the clock. The rest we were promised was the leftover third of somebody's shift pattern. A bargaining position hardened into a number, the number became a measure of health, and anything under it became a symptom. Waking in the middle of the night and lying there has a clinical name. Sleep maintenance insomnia. 3 nights a week for 3 months, and it qualifies as a disorder. About a third of adults report it, and the share climbs steadily after 40. Around 9 million Americans take something prescribed to stop it happening. So the commonest complaint in the sleep clinic is a body keeping a schedule older than the clock it is measured against. We lie awake at 3, doing what every one of them did, and we wait for someone to explain what is wrong with us. So why do we sleep all night in one go? The obvious answer is that the body wants 8 unbroken hours, but volunteers placed in 14 hours of darkness split their sleep in 2 within weeks. The real answer is light. We flooded the evening with it, and the night got short enough to cross in one piece. But that only explains part of it. Broken sleep is not a malfunction. Villagers rose at midnight and went back down. Foragers took the dark in shifts and slept around it. Old men woke before dawn and kept the fire. Sleeping 8 hours straight is something we ask of a body that spent most of its history doing something else.